Welcome back to Elevation Perspective. My name is Mark. Now that the dust has settled, we're a few days removed from the chaos, I'm going to break down the trade deadline and give grades to all 30 teams. We'll jump right into the National League first. Our first team here, the Arizona Diamondbacks. I'm going to give the Diamondbacks a C+. It's always a little tricky to judge how sellers did because you don't have the full look for a trade for years and years to come. The Eugenio Suarez return was widely viewed as underwhelming. They did not get a whole lot for Josh Naylor either. I thought they did pretty well with the Merrill Kelly trade, and the last down here, they couldn't even get a taker for Zach Gallen, who's a free agent at year's end. Next up, the Atlanta Braves, and they are getting an F from me. The Braves are 47-63. They now employ a rotation with Carlos Carrasco, Eric Fetty, and Bryce Elder. That part, while embarrassing, doesn't really matter too much. What does matter is not trading away two veterans on expiring contracts in Marcell Ozuna and Raisel Iglesias. Ozuna has outstanding issues off the baseball field and a hip issue. While I think some teams would look past that, I can give them a pass here. Iglesias, I cannot. With how in-demand relievers are, the Braves couldn't get anything back for Raisel, who is having a bad season but has pitched much better lately. I cannot give the Braves a pass for not moving Raisel Iglesias. Next team, the Chicago Cubs, they get a D. Neck and neck with the Brewers for first place in the Central, and what could be the only year you have Kyle Tucker for, and your big ads are Mike Soroka and Willie Castro? It was very clear that the price for starting pitching was extremely high this trade deadline season, but the Cubs were in a position they needed to add an impact starter more reliable than Michael Soroka. Next up, the Cincinnati Reds get a B-. The Reds are hanging around in the wildcard picture in the National League. Their moves here, they added Ke'Bryan Hayes, Zach Littell, and Miguel Andujar. I do like the idea of Ke'Bryan Hayes getting out of Pittsburgh and getting a fresh start. He has a high floor as a player given his spectacular defense, but I also feel like he should have been more of a league minimum flyer type of guy and not take on the $30+ million remaining on his contract kind of guy. I think both Miguel Andujar and Zach Littell are useful rental guys that will help you out down the stretch. Next up, the Rockies. I'm going to give Colorado a B-. At least the Rockies finally made some trades. It's felt like year after year we've sat there at the deadline and the Rockies have been mysteriously quiet while having no playoff hopes. They got a couple of interesting prospects in the Ryan McMahon trade. I'm happy they were at least active sellers if nothing else. Next up here, the Dodgers, the reigning defending champions. I'm going to give them a grade of a D+. They were pretty quiet, only really bringing in Alex Call and Brock Stewart of note. You can argue with their players getting healthy, there's not a whole lot to be done here, but with how poorly this team has been playing of late and how active the Padres were at the deadline, they could have added more. Next up, the Marlins. We're going to give Miami a C+. I thought initially it was a mistake not trading Sandy Alcantara and/or Edward Cabrera, but the Marlins have been playing really well lately, and maybe they're not as far away from contention as we previously thought. The asking price was obviously huge on those two pitchers, and given they did not get what they were asking for, I can't knock them for holding on. Next up here, the Brewers. We're going to give Milwaukee a C-. The saving grace for the Chicago Cubs and their poorly executed deadline was the Brewers didn't do much either. They grabbed Shelby Miller, who is hurt, Danny Jansen for some catching depth. They did get Andrew Vaughn a few weeks ago, who's been playing incredible, but he doesn't really count as a deadline move in my opinion. Both the Brewers and the Cubs did a poor job. Next up here, the New York Mets get a B+. I think the Mets did pretty well, especially in the bullpen. A huge flaw for this team becomes a strength, adding Ryan Helsley, Gregory Soto, and Tyler Rogers. Cedric Mullins was an alright ad for center field as well. I think the Mets were a starting pitcher and a bat shy of a great deadline, but they still did very well. Next up here, the Philadelphia Phillies get an A. The Phillies had one glaring need in their bullpen, and they got, in my opinion, the best reliever available in Joan Duran. I also thought the package they gave up wasn't that spectacular to Minnesota. The Phillies also picked up Harrison Bader, who's a nice depth piece. He has a little power and speed with great defense in all three outfield spots. Maybe they could have gotten one more bat, but the Phillies and their fans should be really happy right now. Next up here, the Pirates. Pittsburgh gets a C-. They were pretty active. Good on them for getting someone to take Ke'Bryan Hayes' money. While I like the player and think he has a chance to turn it around, it clearly was not going to happen in Pittsburgh. They traded Bednar to the Yankees and got some interesting pieces back. I think holding on to Mitch Keller after all the chatter of him being traded was pretty shocking. They also held on to Dennis Santana in a big reliever market. Didn't love that. Next up here, the San Diego Padres. They could probably get a video of their own with their crazy trade deadline day, but I'm going to give them a surprising B+. The Padres certainly stole the show on deadline day and were the most active team, but how much better did they really get? Mason Miller was the big blue chip player traded to San Diego. He is one of the best relievers in all of baseball. But the Padres already had a top bullpen. They parted ways with number 3 prospect in the sport in Leo DeVries to get him. J.P. Sears and Nestor Cortez are fine back to rotation arms. Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano, and Freddie Fermin for the lineup are okay. It's certainly a deeper team, but I don't really view the Padres as this crazy juggernaut now. I think the Padres are a team that did get better, but they shredded their farm system in the process. The Giants are next. San Francisco gets a B+ in my opinion. Most of the B+ grade here is for being realistic with their situation. They've played really bad baseball for weeks now. To acknowledge this is not our year, let's move some pieces and retool, I appreciate that. I thought they got nice returns for both Tyler Rogers and Camilo Doval. The Giants have a pretty strong core in both the lineup and in the starting rotation. They just need a better supporting cast complementing those players, and that will be Buster Posey's mission this offseason. St. Louis is up next. I'm going to give the Cardinals a B. Another team like the Giants who could have fallen into that delusion of the third wild card, but they shipped off their closer Ryan Helsley along with Phil Maton and Steven Matz. I thought maybe they could have taken it a little bit further with Sonny Gray or Wilson Contreras, but those guys are under control beyond 2025, so it was less of a necessity to move those kind of veterans. Washington is next. We're going to give the Nationals a C. There's not a whole lot going on here. Bad team sold off some pieces in Kyle Finnegan, Mike Soroka, and Alex Call. The only real story around the trade deadline surrounding the Nationals is will they trade Mackenzie Gore? They obviously did not move him. I thought they probably should have, honestly. I feel like this team is so far away from contention and he could have brought back a more impactful package. Multiple players in return that could have accelerated this painfully slow rebuild. On to the American League next. First up, I'm going to give the Athletics an A-. Parting with Mason Miller is no easy thing to do, but when you get back Leo DeVries, an 18-year-old top prospect who's already viewed as a consensus top 5 prospect in the entire sport, yeah, that's the kind of player you have to move Mason Miller for. He's 18, of course there is risk, but there's also risk with a pitcher who throws 104 miles per hour. Overall, I like the move for the Athletics. Baltimore is next. I'm going to give the Orioles a C+. They moved pretty much every player they were supposed to move. They moved Charlie Morton, Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano, Cedric Mullins, and Ramon Urias. They also completely blew up their bullpen, trading away Sir Anthony Dominguez, Gregory Soto, and Andrew Kittredge. It may be a little tricky to rebuild an entire bullpen, but they left their position player core intact and are still in a pretty good position to contend going forward. The Red Sox are next. I'm going to give Boston an F. So they made the Rafael Devers trade earlier in the year that everyone hated. Their leadership came out and said they're not throwing away this season, alluding to the idea of reinvesting that Devers money into other players, other parts of this roster to improve. The Red Sox, while currently holding a playoff spot, only added Dustin May and Steven Matz. The majority of the American League is content with mediocrity, and the Red Sox are right there with them. Next up, the White Sox, I give them a D. They did well in the Adrian Houser trade, getting back an interesting bat in Curtis Mead. They got something for Austin Slater, that feels like a win as well. But how do you not trade Luis Robert? He has been terrible for the better part of 2 years now with constant trips to the injured list. The idea of, we're just going to invoke his $20 million option and when he's great next year we'll trade him then is just very foolish to me. He's been playing well the last few weeks. There was certainly a market for him, and the White Sox chose to hold. Next up here, Cleveland. I'm going to give the Guardians a grade of a D as well. They got a nice prospect for Shane Bieber, but that's kind of all they did. I'm sure the Emmanuel Clase situation really affected and altered their plans, but it's still a very quiet, underwhelming deadline from Cleveland. Next up here, the Tigers. I have to give Detroit a very frustrating C-. The Tigers are in a position to be the top team in the American League, and they just kind of added a bunch of mid-arms. Kyle Finnegan, Paul Sewald, Chris Paddock, Charlie Morton, Rafael Montero. The Tigers have a pretty good reputation with turning pitching around, but at this point, this is too many wild cards hoping to turn around for my liking while you sit as the top team in the American League. You're a surefire playoff team. You should be shopping for more talented players. The Astros are next here. I'm going to give Houston an A- for their trade deadline efforts. Bringing back one of their former star players in Carlos Correa, who admittedly has not been playing great, but I feel like the numbers will normalize back in Houston. Ramon Urias is a nice depth piece from Baltimore. And the big X factor for me here, I'm a huge fan of Jesus Sanchez, formerly with the Marlins. Great bat speed, hits the ball really hard. Getting out of Miami could be a nice move for Sanchez's career. Next up here, the Royals. I'm going to give Kansas City a D+ grade. I thought extending Seth Lugo instead of trading him was a mistake. He's older with really bad advanced stats. Now, throwing so many pitches and being very crafty could explain why his expected ERA is so much higher than his actual ERA. But it's just not a gamble I'd like to take going forward with Lugo. Then they bought a few small pieces like Brandon Grichuk and Mike Yastrzemski. I just don't think the Royals are a good team. I would have looked to move their enticing players like Seth Lugo and Carlos Estevez instead of extending contracts and adding more players. Next up, the Angels, they get a D. The Angels never really seemed to do the trade deadline correctly, in my opinion. They held Taylor Ward, who has 26 home runs and 82 runs batted in right now. He was certainly a player in some level of demand, probably high. They didn't trade Kenley Jansen or Yohan Moncada. They even added a few relief arms in a trade with Washington. I just don't know with them. Their non-existent direction continues to dwell on their really putrid franchise. Next up, Minnesota, we have to give the Twins, who were probably the biggest sellers of the deadline, a C. They blew up their roster big time, most notably the two elite relievers in Joan Duran and Griffin Jax. We won't know how they really did as a whole for probably 5 to 10 years maybe. They brought in so many young players. I appreciate that they didn't go 1 foot in, 1 foot out, even though they did wind up holding out to Joe Ryan. This group of players, they've had the same core the last few years and simply has just not worked out. A reset to replenish the farm was not a bad idea for Minnesota. The New York Yankees are up next. We give them a trade deadline grade of a B. They made some nice depth moves in the lineup with Ryan McMahon to add a strong defensive player with a little bit of pop to the bottom of the lineup. Austin Slater and Amed Rosario are short side platoon bench guys. They added real impact to the bullpen with Bednar, Doval, and Bird. I'm not crazy about Doval and Bird, but I do really like the Bednar move for the Yankees. The Yankees now have a good lineup and a strong bullpen, but I thought they really had to add one more starting pitcher. I don't like relying on Will Warren, Luis Heel, and Cam Schlittler 3 out of 5 days. Next up here is Seattle. The Mariners get an A in my book. This has been a team who has desperately needed to add offense to their roster, and they finally got that done bringing in both Naylor and Suarez in separate trades from Arizona. Now, with one of the best lineups in baseball, arguably the best rotation in baseball, and a strong bullpen, the Mariners could be in store for a long October run. Next up, Tampa Bay. I'm going to give the Rays a B. The Rays both bought and sold like they tend to do every deadline. Switching out Zach Littell with Adrian Hauser, bringing in Griffin Jax, who I do view as an elite reliever. But I found it very interesting that they parted ways and essentially gave up on Taj Bradley. It wasn't that long ago that Taj Bradley was viewed as a rising star in the league. Maybe they should have moved Yandy Diaz and Brandon Lau, who seem to be drawing a good amount of trade interest. But this is still a competitive team with good pieces, and they've earned the benefit of the doubt. Next up, the Texas Rangers. They get a B in my book. It was only a few weeks ago the Rangers looked like sellers. But after a stretch of some really good play, that pendulum swung to them being buyers. They brought in Merrill Kelly, Phil Maytown, and Danny Colomb to shore up the pitching to get this team in a position to go on a wild card run. And our last but not least American League team here, the Toronto Blue Jays, get a C+. This grade could easily alter depending on what version of Shane Bieber the Blue Jays get. It's a very interesting gamble taking this shot on Shane Bieber. The former Cy Young winner is set to make his season debut the next few weeks. He has impressed scouts on his rehab assignment, but he hasn't thrown a pitch in a big league game since early 2024. It feels like the Blue Jays are having one of those Cinderella type of seasons, to me at least. Everything kind of seems to be going their way. I would have liked to see their front office try harder here. Those were the grades for all 30 teams at the MLB trade deadline. As I said, especially for the sellers, we really don't know how these trades play out for years and years to come. But we love making decisions and proclamations only having half of the information. If you like this video, please hit subscribe. Hopefully everyone has a great day, and thank you so much for watching.